It's great to come in. I have been, well, some of you have probably got to a higher level of sport than I did, but I swum for 13, 14 years competitively, for the most part in Auckland, and the last part with Jan Cameron, Hannah McLean, the Dean Kent era, Stephen Ferguson, swum with all of those swimmers, Helen Norfolk, a few others. So although we didn't have that facility when I was swimming, it would have been great. But yeah, like probably your lives at the moment, you're completely and utterly focused on your careers, and that's probably exactly the best place to be. And all your 99% of your energy should be focused on, all the things that can make you the best athlete you possibly can. So I was thinking back when I was writing these notes as to what I was doing when I was swimming, and everything was kind of making it easier for me to be a better swimmer. Whilst nearer the end, I was starting to think about what I would do after swimming. And I think that's the balance, is finding, giving a little bit of thought to that, so that when you eventually retire, which I know probably doesn't seem like anywhere near for you guys right now, but at some point you will stop being a high performance athlete. What are you going to do after that? And so what I've done is Hannah gave me quite a few really good questions and pointers to walk you all through, and I've written some answers from my own life experience. I think if you haven't already, get whether it's your phone to write some notes or a notepad, because there'll be things that you hear that you go, that's really good, that means something to me, write it down. I haven't got screeds of PowerPoint slides. I've got 3 videos to show you of our 3 events that we currently run. They're 1 minute long each. They'll give you a real good understanding of what we do. But otherwise, write down anything you hear that interests you along the way. And at the end, I'm going to give you some outtakes of, if you wanted to start your own business, because that's what I did, and I'm not sure whether that's what you all one day want to do, or even know. Doesn't even matter if you don't know right now. But some of the outtakes I'm going to give you are from my perspective of starting a business and how to, and some of the things that you should sort of think about. If you want to go and work for a big firm or a big brand or a big corporate, there's nothing wrong with that. It just wasn't for me, and so that's why I do what I do. So the first question or prompter that Hannah gave me was introduce myself and why I got into events, and what is my purpose. So I guess it started when I was younger. I, as well as swimming, I liked organising things. You know how you sort of know what you're good at? Now, you might be good at trampolining and hockey and sailing, but what else do you have a natural ability in? And it sounds funny, but I was always quite social, and Hannah will remember that. I liked organising parties, whether it be party buses, parties for my friends. I wanted to bring them all together. And so I organised these parties called the Big Bash, and we had, I called it the Big Bash, then the Big Bash 2, and then Big Bash 3. All my mates actually really enjoyed me organising these things. I knew the elements it took to put on a good event, whether it be the size of the venue or the drink prices had to be right, the music had to be perfect, So right from the very get-go, I knew that was something I enjoyed doing, that was a hobby, but I never at the time thought it would be something I'd do as my profession. So that was sort of probably the first thought I always go back to when I think, how did I get into events? Just so in case you don't know, I run Quantum Events, which is an event management company, I guess you'd call it, but we own all of our events. So we don't manage events for other people. We develop and own and manage our own events. When I went on my OE, so I finished swimming in 1999, which seems like a long time ago. And at that point, a lot of athletes it's a big transition where you pretty much have known what you're doing your entire life and your purpose, and then all of a sudden that purpose goes, and you've got to go, what am I going to put all this energy into now? So I went on my OE in 2003, and that's when I started thinking about the first ever ocean swimming event I'd put on, and I sort of let that simmer away on my European and UK sort of trip. And I'd been competing in triathlons a little bit just on the cuff, and I saw what they were doing with events and in my own sort of social occasions I'd done. And then I thought, well, when I get back, I'm trying to think back to how far that was. It was 16 years ago, but I remember coming back and I knew that Hannah was still swimming and they were all swimming at North Shore Swim Club, and I knew a lot of the swimmers, and I knew Jan Cameron, and I'll run this event and try and get all those swimmers to come down. And I just sort of threw it all together, and we had our first King of the Bays. It's called King of the Bays, which is still part of our national series. And it was all a bit of gut feel, and I just did everything myself. I pulled in my family and friends, and I really didn't know whether it was going to make money or anything. I just sort of gave it a go, and the first one was a success, and then I sort of went on from there. So the next question was, what did I do at university, and how did that prepare me for my career? My first university, I'd swum with Gary Hurring in Wellington in 1995, and I went to university at Victoria University in Wellington. Now, at that time, I had absolutely no idea of what I wanted to do or be. And in fact, I remember for quite a few years, I kind of, and I think a lot of, probably, I don't know about students and younger athletes these days, whether that's still a thing, that you're kind of still scratching your head as to, what do I want to be? What do I want to train for? So I just went to university because that's what everyone did, you know. Came out of school, you know, my parents kind of encouraged me to go to university. I went to university, and I did a Bachelor of Commerce and Administration. It was the most boring part of my life I can remember, actually. I was doing a university course I didn't understand what I was doing. I didn't have any attention and focus to it. I'd been reasonably good academic, but I failed like 2 out of 5 papers. I had the worst swimming year of my life in '95. So I not only hated university, but I had a really bad year with swimming. And so that was my first year at university. I then moved back to, and that gave me nothing, I don't think, other than saying, don't do something just for the sake of doing it. Then I went to Massey University Albany in '96, and the university was quite new then. The campus on this side, on the main side, wasn't built yet, or hardly. I did a Bachelor of Business Studies majoring in sport management and coaching, and I guess the sport management and coaching was the only thing that I was a sports person, so I love sport. Well, I said, well, what can you do to make a degree sound more appealing? So I'll put sport management and coaching on the end. No idea whether I was going to go into that later on, but I did that. I learnt the basics of event management, marketing and sponsorship. I did some good practicums, so worked on sort of a sports conference with Trish Bradbury at Massey University and the World University Games 1997. So I was kind of starting to get into managing things that I thought were quite cool at that point in time. Hey, if you've got any questions along the way, just pipe up. What university did for me, I sometimes think back to university, and and where I'm at in my business and career now, and I wonder how much it actually did benefit me. I get asked to go and do lectures at Massey University now, and I've got to kind of be careful what I say, because I think a lot of what I did was just out of pure passion and my own understanding. I do wonder how much I did take from university, but I'm sure there was something. It certainly opened doors and introduced me to a lot of new people and networking, and gave me the basics. But I think that's kind of where it ends. I think unless you want to be a doctor or a lawyer, you've got to be really careful of doing these vanilla degrees at university. Yeah, there's lots of vanilla degrees, and they're a business and they're trying to make money, so they want to tell you anyway. That's my bit on degrees in university. The next one was outline your career path, each job or business venture you had, and anything it taught you or along the way to where I am now. I had fun thinking of these ones, actually, right back to the very beginning. Fish and chip shop was my first job. wrapping the fish and chips. Now, I didn't know how far you wanted me to go back, but I thought that was quite funny. And what did that teach me? Tiny wage. I was doing it for the money and absolutely hated it because the people that owned it spoke Chinese and couldn't speak much English, so they used to talk behind my back, I reckon. Anyway, that was when I was 15 or 16. I then went on, and this is while I was swimming. So, and if you ever want a great job while you're being an athlete, that's quite social. Was a gas station attendant for like 2 years. Absolutely loved it. But what did it teach me? One, I was in sole charge of a gas station, which at that age I thought was pretty cool. Like, I'm actually locking the place up, and that was my first taste of responsibility. And it sounds silly, but and then also talking to people. You also, back in the day when actually used to pump people's gas, so that taught me engaging with people, customer service, and responsibility. I think of those ones. I was doing swimming at the time, so that was the main focus. I was the head coach of Coast Swimming Club for one summer, which was a holiday job. I then went into sales jobs. My first real job was selling Ironman wetsuits back before they were Blue 70 wetsuits, and I was a little travelling salesman. And so that taught me about selling. That was my first introduction to selling. So I was actually selling a product. I had customers. I was going around, and it was funny because I was driving my own 1976 Mitsubishi Lancer because I didn't have a company car, so it always brings back funny memories, that job. But I did that for a year or two, and then probably one of the most defining moments was my first business, which was opening a cafe. So I did a lot of my training, and I used to work. In fact, one of the things I haven't got here is lifeguarding at Glenfield Pools, and I worked there, and it was my second home, the Glenfield Pools, and I thought it'd be great to have a cafe in the front entrance of this place. And being a little bit blind but full of passion and energy, I developed a cafe, built it, and it's still there. I cringe when I walk in and look at it because it brings back a lot of bad memories for me. But the reason I wanted to start a cafe was one of the reasons I still do what I do now, and you guys might resonate with you that for me it's about visualizing something and then the steps it takes to get there and then seeing it actually happen. And I think that's one of the key things with my swimming, with your hockey, with your trampolining, with your sailing, is that you know how much work you've got to put in and what result you want to get out. And that cafe back in 2000, in the year 2000, was my little, I think I can see that cafe. I could walk in that place well before it ever took shape. And I knew what I wanted to build and what I wanted it to be. And I managed to get that done with very little experience, just a heap of energy and passion and will to learn. But I do remember the day I opened and I did the first day of work and thought, this ain't for me. So I had to run that cafe for 6 months, hating it. I worked 80 hours a week at 26 years old, cooking muffins and making sandwiches. And it makes me laugh now. But literally, I had nightmares for a year after I sold it, thinking the guy was going to need to give it back to me. I sold it to my best customer. He was an ex-policeman. He used to come every day and he thought what I did was amazing. So I sold it to him. Yeah. So that was Quantum Cafe, and that's where the Quantum name came from, Quantum Cafe. I sold that and so I spent $17,000 building it, believe it or not. It wasn't a lot of money. And long story short, did I make money? Not really. I had a business partner who wasn't that efficient at paying the bills. And so when I sold it, I had $45,000 worth of bills to pay, and the guy paid me $60K for it. So I ended up out with $3,000, but I was just stoked I didn't lose money. So for me, it was the learning. I got so much learning out of that one. I mean, yeah. and I didn't know anything about the finances of the business, and I'll get into that later, because that's something that you really need to understand as early on in the piece with your own business, is the money coming in and the money going out, and things like that. After that, I wanted no responsibility at all, so I worked at the barbecue factory, and I sold barbecues for a bit. And then I got my real corporate job selling chewing gum, which was hilarious for my mates. So I worked at Wrigley's, which are a global, Wrigley's, they sell all the chewing gum in New Zealand pretty much, and they're a big global. I loved the job, I worked hard and did a really good job, but this was a big learning for me, and you guys will understand it as, well, some of you are in team sports, so you know that the part you play is a part in getting the team to win, right, on the hockey field. Whereas individual sports, you're probably in the boat by yourself or with someone else. Is that, I think there's a bit of both, but the more effort you put in, the better result you're going to get. There's no one kind of holding you back. And what I felt at Wrigley's was that I was being held back pretty quickly. I actually saw the CEO sitting in his desk, and I thought naively perhaps, within a year, why can't I want to do that in 2 years. And then I figured out that some guys had been there 25 years and were still 2 steps away from him. And I was like, no. I don't want that. I don't want to work somewhere, put in the effort in it, and there's a hierarchy that I need to work through. I was just, no, that wasn't me. And people telling me I could or couldn't do something. So if there was a better way to do something, there was a reason why it couldn't be done, you had to jump through these hoops, that just made no sense to me either. Being reactive, if something doesn't work in my business, I change it immediately. I don't have to ask for anyone's permission to change anything. I remember at Wrigley's, which was quite funny, energy drinks had just taken off. And I knew that chewing gum naturally creates saliva, which here's a little tip if you didn't know it already. But when you were studying, if you chew gum, your brain stays more active, and so you naturally feel more alert. So I thought, well, why don't you add guarana and something to a gum and create an energy gum? And so I went through, made a prototype, presented to the CEO, and I just remember it was kind of like they treated me like a school kid. Like, oh, look at Scott's little project, and I just kind of felt that was another reason why I thought, yeah, my ideas had to get outside of that corporate environment. And I'd watched gums they'd launched to the market. I absolutely knew were going to bomb, and they did. And I told them, and they just go ahead and launch it. So I was like, okay. So off Wrigley's, I thought I need to be my own boss, me to have my own business. I went on my OE, that was that 2003, 6 months, let the thoughts simmer off the back of that corporate job, and I thought, I don't want to work. That was a real crux in my career. I was like, I don't really want to do that. What do I want to do? I'd been a swimmer. Could I create a business in swimming? So I came back. I got a quick job doing something just to make ends meet. That was a funny one. I went into Monaco Corporation that did Nintendo, Casio calculators. They did a whole lot of cool stuff like Pioneer Audio and Toshiba televisions. But the only 2 jobs they had, they wanted me, but they said you can either do Casio calculators or Nintendo. And I've never been a gamer. I think you're either a gamer or you're not. And I thought, well, Casio calculators, that's a snore fest. There's no way I want to be anything to do with Casio calculators. Nintendo sounds way better, even though I just knew nothing about gaming. And so I took that job, and within months, and this is the test of if you're not doing something you're passionate about, is that within a few months they knew that I was just, in fact, what I was doing was incorporating my own events company. I'd actually was on their fax machine, incorporating Quantum Events at the time. In fact, I know exactly where I was in that building when I put it in the machine to incorporate Quantum Events in December 2003 at their workplace. And then I started cooking up the King of the Bays, looking for sponsors, marketing, all that sort of stuff. I had a company car, so I'd go and see sponsors in their car. It was terrible. And in the end, they called me into the office. I said, Scott, there's something, we just sense you're not really into this. And I was like, And I think they wanted to kind of coach me and get me to stay, and I said, yeah, no, I want to leave. And take the lunch hour, you know. Have a think about it. I went and met up with my dad, I remember this, and I said, I hate it. I just cannot spend another day there. And so I resigned. After lunch, I came in, I resigned. And they were so nice. They said, well, you can keep the car for another month. And I was like, sweet. So cruised around in the car, and I signed up Bella Design Furniture, my first naming rights sponsor for King of the Bays, and I did all that. Anyway, I then had King of the Bays in April 2004. I then didn't have enough money. This is the thing, that when you start a business, start it young so you don't need much money. Because when I started my business, I didn't know how much money I was going to make. I was just like, to be honest, it was a hobby with a little bit of it was money involved, but it was a hobby. And so I still needed another job. So I got a job at DB Breweries selling beer, which at that time when I was 27 was the best job in the world, like selling beer. So, and the good thing about the job at DB Breweries is I told my boss, Paul, at the time I had a business on the side. I said, is this a problem? He goes, not a problem, because I got a business on the side too, and he was doing property. So he was a real young, understanding boss that knew what I was doing. He said to me, and I always remember it, as long as you get the work done, as long as you hit the marks, I'm fine. And I always remember that, and I thought, well, so I was a sales rep again, going into supermarkets, selling beer to the supermarkets, and I worked 40 hours a week in that job and 40 hours a week in my bedroom on Quantum events. And it sounds cliched, but I literally had a desk in my bedroom, and I worked there when I wasn't working at DB. And I did both, and I ran a few events while I was at DB. And what did I learn at DB? I mean, the reason I'm sort of expanding on this is because it might not be now or straight after your sporting career that you think I want to start my own business, but it's the jobs that led up to me starting my own business that gave me some of the skills I've got now. In selling and just some of the other things. But DB, Paul Reefer, who was my boss, was still one of the best salesmen I've ever seen. I used to shadow him. I'd go into a meeting with a very gruff buyer of a Pack and Save in Lincoln Road. You know, they've got multi-million dollar businesses. And I'd watch him just own the meeting and get the guy to go the path he wanted him to take, and just exceptional sales skills. And so I watched him in awe for a year and a half, and I learnt a lot of his, the skills he had. What else? And the other thing with DB, which I learnt from sales, was that Lion breweries were the biggest selling beer at the time. So Lion Red and Spates and all of those. We had Tui and Export Gold, which just got spanked by those two beers at the time. And so we always had to be smarter at selling those beers. So not only, that's the sharpening of the sales skills that I have now. I resigned from DB at the end of 2005, and the reason I did, and this is when the company really started, was that I got Sovereign, the life insurance company, on board with King of the Bays in 2005. That was while I was at DB, so I had a big corporate on board with one of my sponsors, with one of my events during my employment at DB, and then that sponsor I talked into, or sold, a national series concept. So my 2 Auckland events turned into the New Zealand Ocean Swim Series in 2006. Sovereign went from paying me this much money to that much money, and it was a huge moment in my life and my career. So I knew that I never would have time for a job, so I resigned from the job. In fact, it was so big, my partner at the time, Tash, resigned from her, like at the time, high-paying job to help me expand and take advantage of what we had in front of us. And so that was when Quantum Events started. I resigned from job, and it seemed, looking back, it should have been an easy decision, but it was the hardest decision I can ever remember. I remember just agonizing over, but how can I can't, I've been grown up going, get a job, and all of my mates had jobs, had company cars, and I was like, I'm going to give all that away to do this, and I did, but I just thought, God, it was a hard decision. the tall poppy syndrome, all of those sorts of things, people judging you. But I did it, and then Tash came on board, and that's how it started. So that was sort of that part. Has anyone got any questions on the sort of career progression of any of that? Otherwise, I can just crack on. I'm going to show you some videos soon and break it up.
Did you
Yeah.
have any people that mentored you or
Yeah. I think that's the go into Dave's.
Okay. Did you have any people that mentored you or helped you make that career move?
Yeah, Hannah had a little thing later on saying, but I'm happy to talk about that now. Yes, I had two people, and I've still got one person that is involved in kind of talking to me about my top level stuff. But I had a business mentor called Dave Booth who kind of helped me through the scary decisions of probably after I'd made the decision. But when I'm dealing with a corporate turning over hundreds of millions of dollars, and then there's little old me at 26, you could quite easily get steamrolled by that corporate. So he helped be that more experienced head for me, and that when I didn't know something, and I didn't know a whole lot of stuff back then, and I'll talk about faking it until you make it soon, because I still do that now, and that's something that you have to get used to doing if you want to succeed in business. But they helped me understand the things I didn't know. And then even now, there's a gentleman called Peter Fitzsimmons who is a life member of Triathlon New Zealand Surf, and he's an advisor of Swimming New Zealand, and he knows everyone on the planet, and he kind of gives me that overarching advice. So yeah, it is important. I don't need it all the time, but when I need it, they're there. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Did you learn a lot of your the financial side of the business? Did you employ someone straight away to take care of that, or did you sort of learn that yourself?
Yeah, it's, the finance side of it, yes, I had an accountant. I think you've got to get an accountant pretty early on to tell them what your business is. You do have to keep good books. If you let that get out of hand, you don't pay taxes, then it's all going to come unraveled. So yes, I had an accountant, and I'm just trying to think back that far. I think she did everything for me because I call it allergic, and I'm still to a degree allergic to finances. But I've had to get better at it, because if you keep your head in the sand for long enough, it'll be the end of your business. So, but the reason I didn't care too much about it at the start was I knew, this is funny because I knew there was far more money coming in than going out, and that's all I knew. But when there's less money coming in and more money going out, that's when you've got to make sure you understand what's going on in your business. So for the first few years, I'd call it lucky, but I think I wasn't lucky. I think I just created it. But Sovereign at 26 or 27 paid me extremely well. And for a number of years, I didn't have to worry about money. But then business changed, and I can talk about that, and resilience and changing things. Yeah. Anyone else got any questions on that part? Cool. So talk about quantum events as it is today. This is Hannah saying all the events you run, number of participants, interesting facts and things like that. So I'm going to show you a couple of show reels in a second. But what does quantum events look like today? I've got an office in Orewa. It's across the road from the beach. It was nothing special, and now it's adequate for what we need. I've got 3 staff. I've got a full-time marketing and partnerships manager or sponsorship manager. I've got an operations manager, and I've got an event coordinator / administrator. That allows me to get off some of the doing and off, as you call it, off the tools, and do more of what I'm good at. Someone said to me before, once you're in business, you do the $100 or $150 an hour work and let someone else do the smaller hourly work, and that's what you've got to do. If you want to grow a business, then if you don't do that, you're going to have a handbrake. I also work with agencies, so we've got social media. So we've got a key partners that are outside of my own staff that help us do things. So the first event is, which you may be familiar with, is called the New Zealand Ocean Swim Series. It's sponsored by Banana Boat, so it's called the Banana Boat Ocean Swim Series. it's been going. It was the first event I ran, King of the Bays, back in 2004. Is the first event of that series coming up. It's 7 recreational ocean swims around New Zealand, and it's for pool swimmers. It's for most of them are 40 to 60 years old, so it's sort of more of an adult event, participatory event, and yeah, it's got sponsors. We run it, so I'll just show you a quick show reel of that one, just so you get an idea of what it is. So that's the that's our New Zealand series, and then I'll just talk about so that was the main focus for my business over the first 15 years, and Hannah actually reminded me of some other events I'd done. We founded the beach series on Takapuna Beach, which is a swim, paddle and run series, which you may have seen. Tuesday nights, every Tuesday. Started that in 2005, ran it to 2015, then sold it to another guy, Nick, who continues to run it. That was a huge part of our life. I was just running that series there, the Ocean Swim series and the beach series, which most people got confused about. We ran a dog. I also had a passion for dogs. And I also thought the dog category or the food category is huge. Like if you go down to the supermarket, you'll see an entire aisle of dog food. You know, if an aisle of a supermarket's full of one thing, there's money in it. So I thought, well, I'll just create a dog walking event called the Wagon Walk. And that was between 2007, 8 and 9. And I got Champ dog food on board from Heinz Waddies. And that was hugely lucrative for a couple of years until I think they cottoned on that the sponsors were paying me too much for the event. But we ran a national series. It was hilarious. We had like 1,300 dogs going for a walk. People used to say to me, how do you get people to pay to swim in the sea? And then now you're getting them to pay you to walk their dog. I always remember my mate saying that to me. And some of the funny moments of that was like, you know, I kind of treated it like an ocean swim. I couldn't get my head around away from there needed to be a start line and a finish line and a starter hooter. And I'd blow the hooter, and I remember this dog walking off, and he was front, and then just takes this massive big, you know what, in the front, and you know, and we had that. They were the emergencies of what we were doing with that one, but. Oh, and you've got the nutters as well, because, you know, with every, like, you've got the cat people and the dog people. And so there was just, I remember them turning up to registration to get their packs, and you're just like, oh my God. Anyway, that was that one. Ocean Swim Fiji, this is an event I absolutely love, and is probably a classic case study of thinking of an idea and it turning into reality. And I know I did that with New Zealand Ocean Swim Series, but it's so long ago and it took so many steps to get there. And where it is now is not, I had no idea I wanted to create that. I just started with one event and then it kind of conversations flowed. Sovereign said to me, it needs to be national if we're going to continue to partner with it. Okay then, we'll make a national series then, how about that? And that's what we did. So, but with Fiji, I was over at my brother's wedding in 2016. In Denarau, and I just thought, this is so nice, it's warm here in our winter, why don't we have an event here? It was like, we've got a massive database here, they all literally hang up their togs and goggles and go, oh, that's that done till next summer, so why don't we run something here? And so that's basically how it started. I just went back and I got fire in the belly and I was like, I'm going to make this happen. And it was 18 months of between December 2016, the first event was September 2018. So it was 22 months of work between the first thought and the event taking place. And this here is the show reel from the first Ocean Swim Fiji. The work I did between the idea and the event taking place was colossal. Like trying to figure out how to run an event in Fiji and what that looked like, and the suppliers and the government and the funding and the model I learnt so much from that, and I'm glad I did it because I think we've got a winner. And yeah, so that's sort of a story of Ocean Swim Fiji and kind of how it came about. And it's and just before I show that, so what is it? It's this will probably show you, but it's 5 days, 3 swims, 0 worries is the tagline. It's again that similar market of 40 to 60, more female skewed. So we had 72% female. People with a little bit more money. So it's staying in a 5-star Sofitel hotel. It's not cheap, but it's a fantastic experience. And it's recreational swimming. It's swimming around an island and then getting out and drinking cocktails all afternoon is the best way to describe it. Like it's literally, some people say, I can't swim. I go, doesn't really matter. Just come, like you're swimming in 1 metre of water around an island. So you can, if you've had enough, you just walk out. You know, like it doesn't matter. So this is Ocean Swim Fiji. Yeah, so that was Fiji, and our Fiji event for this year is in 3 months, August. We're already sort of 20 over what we got this year with 2 months to go of selling. Australians were slow on the uptake in year 1 because 1, I was a Kiwi, 2, they'd never heard of me, whereas Kiwis knew what we did here, and so we got 75% Kiwis year 1. I think this year we're going to have more Aussies going than Kiwis, and we're starting to get the Asian community come from Singapore and Japan, and also some Americans from the West Coast come in. So it's really exciting. The business model of Fiji was completely different to New Zealand. I've got Tourism Fiji on board and some of the key Fiji Airways, and you know, basically there's money to be made. It's called event tourism, and you see there's not that many people there, but just to give you an idea, when 200 people travel to Fiji, on average with this one, they're going to spend about $3,000 or $4,000 each, maybe $5,000 over a week. And so that equates to $1 million in spend. And so my job is to get the biggest chunk of that $1 million. So it might be clipping the ticket on rooms they purchase, on flights they book, putting a package of activity together with a margin in it. So that's essentially the business model for Fiji. Sponsorship's not as much of a, well, it's not that feasible for something like that because we've got people coming from around the world and there are not that many of them. So that's Fiji. And then Swim Kids is our other event. It's in Australia. Banana Boat, as I said, is the sponsor of our New Zealand series. They're based in Australia. And they said, is there anything in Australia that like what you do? And so I said no, and they said, so long story short, I pitched them an Australian ocean swim series, of which they didn't have enough money for. I said, okay, well, why don't we start with a children's series? And so we launched that just this last summer, and this is the show reel for that one. And I'm working on developing that this next summer coming up. Same song, by the way. Yeah. So we're in, you'll see the states, we're in 6 different cities of Australia. This guy about to speak is Kai Hurst, who's a 7-time Australian Ironman champion.
Series here, and it was absolutely fantastic. 7 and 12-year-olds, they got to swim the 100, the 200, and 300. And really, at the end of the day, it's just water awareness and getting their confidence up. We've got 1,000 eyes on the beach, and I think the event ran really well.
So that was that one, yeah. So they're the 3 events we do. Always working on new ideas with council. We're looking at a high-profile midwinter swim for next winter on potentially Waiheke. So they're the sort of things that float my boat, but I've got to make sure that I don't get out of hand and do too many things. And then my wife starts tapping me on the shoulder and saying, just stop creating new things, because then you take the eye off your ball of what you've currently got going. Any questions on those events or anything you've seen so far?
How was it dealing with the Fijian government?
Yeah, it's interesting, comical sometimes actually. I don't deal too much directly with government. We deal with Tourism Fiji, and luckily the CEO is an Aussie, so you kind of speak the same language. Aussies and Kiwis tend to speak pretty much the same business language. What is interesting is I wanted to limit the number of Fijian companies I dealt with, purely for the fact that I'm not used to how they deal. In New Zealand, if someone says, let's do that, good, okay, yep, you can put it in writing, but you kind of trust that that person's going to deliver on that. We had a situation with our safety crew, which was a Fijian-based company that, just a quick story about to explain, is that we had an understanding over email. I thought I made it pretty clear. He wanted the money up front. So in New Zealand, if Surf Lifesaver New Zealand patrol my event, I'll pay them the 20th of the following month after they deliver the service. That's what New Zealand companies do. You pay afterwards. There's a trust there that if I don't pay, they're going to hunt me down because they know where I live, you know. Or I'm a good operator, I'm reputable, so I will pay. He wanted not a deposit, he wanted the entire sum of money, which was 7,500 Fijian dollars, prior to the event taking place, prior to him delivering anything. And so I tried to say, well, I can understand you wanting a deposit, but I'm not quite comfortable paying you the whole amount before we do the event. And the answer was pretty much, if you don't pay me, I'm not going to do it. And so I was like, okay. So in New Zealand, I would have gone, you can get stuffed. I'll work with someone else. But when you're in Fiji, you don't have that option. I can't put 3 IRBs and 12 lifeguards on a plane and take them over there. It's too expensive. So I had to kind of work with this guy. And then we came to the event, and he asked me how many numbers I had in the swim. And he was deciding and telling me, after I'd paid him, that he didn't think we needed the number of lifeguards that we'd agreed to. And so you can see how that I really had to put my attitude in check and look at the bigger picture, But you can see that's sort of what happened with that one. That was a Fijian company, and I'm not saying all Fijian companies were like that, but to make it simpler and easier for me, I want to work with international companies or people that I can trust. And business is about trust. So the government, Fiji Tourism, are paying us money at the moment, and I think what they're paying us is a small token of what we give back to the country in terms of economic impact. So when all these people come in, they all spend money in Fiji, and it's great for tourism. So it's good. Yeah. Anyone else? Yeah.
Oh, one more thing.
Yeah.
Did you book the airline tickets for the customers?
No. We have I work with a travel agent, and they're kind of my Ocean Swim Fiji travel agency. And so we put packages together, and we hope people buy the packages, and then we clip the ticket on the airfare. But there's not a lot of margin in airfares, as you probably know. You can go on 1,000,001 airline sites now and get deals. I was sort of thinking it would be amazing, because to charter your own 737 would be a dream, right? And the idea of it sounds great. And I'm in a conversation with Fiji Air about chartering a 737. But you have to get everyone going on from the same port, from Auckland, Nandi, and back on the same day for that to work. And we've got people coming from around the world, different ports, travelling in and out different times, so I can't see it working. But yeah, it would be pretty cool to put our logo on the side of a plane with Fiji Air or something. Maybe that's later, when we're selling out like within 1 week. Yeah. I'll just quickly touch on, how did I develop my commercial skill sets? Sales jobs. Definitely sales jobs. If you want to, business is about selling at the end of the day. If you don't have sales skills, or you're not comfortable talking to people, work on your social skills, work on your sales skills. My commercial skill sets, i.e. when I go and pitch to get money, that's what that means. Observing what other events offered sponsors is what I did. Reading and upskilling. I've got a bookshelf of business books. I read lots of business books. I don't go to that many courses, but I observe. LinkedIn, I'm reading. Oh, that looks interesting. I'll read that. Upskill all the time. Kim Skildum Reid, Power Sponsorship. The best book in sponsorship. Anything you need to know about sponsorship, you read that. Power Sponsorship by Kim Skildum Reid. Listen to what companies need and customise proposals to suit. I was with DB Breweries yesterday, my old work, and you get better at understanding what they want. They don't just want a logo on something. Everyone knows DB Breweries. They want people to think differently about what DB means. And so they've got a slogan called Made by Doing. Means like it's a bit blokey. It's kind of like, if you want to do something, you got to do it, sort of thing, you know. And so they're looking at, our events are a bit like that. It's kind of like, I need to just get out of my comfort zone and swim in the ocean and come across the finish line. I'm doing something, And also environmental. So they're going to look after the waste stations at our event and do a beach cleanup and reward people for picking up stuff on the beach. So that's where partnerships and sponsorships go. You can't not go that deep. And I think the other thing with commercial skill sets is, when I was younger, you're young. When you go and sit in front of an old guy, he just looks at you like you're the young guy. And you can't do anything about that until you get older. And I've noticed, as I've got older and greyer, and been in the business long enough, that you get mana and respect and reputation. And when I walk into a room now, it's far different to walk into a room when I was 15 years younger. Don't worry about that. That's just being young, and it'll come. So next one, what learning, professional development do you undertake to be top of your game? Yeah, we talked about mentoring, reading and observing, striving for improvement always. Anyway, that's a bit about that. Constantly inquisitive about new marketing technology, kind of ignoring at your peril. Any business owner that says, well, I'm not really that tech focused or da-da-da, if you choose to stay the same every year, you will lose. Like someone will gazump you, the competitor will come in, they'll be watching you, people watch you. To be the best, as you all know, you need to be doing something better and different to your competitors. And I think that's the same in business, it is in sport. You need to be doing something different. How do I look after myself? Very quickly, to be the best I can in my job. All the normal stuff. Enough sleep, eating reasonably well. I still swim and do those gym classes. Social times and family, having work time outside of work. So try and not work in the weekends or the evenings. Try and not, one thing I do need to work on is the phone and the emails and all that sort of stuff. I've got 3 kids. Catching up with mates to shoot the shit, talk about business. That's my outlet sometimes, to talk about stuff that happened during the day that sometimes my wife Tash is bored as hell listening to and doesn't want to talk to me about. And the other thing is drinking. I mean, you guys probably don't drink a lot of alcohol. I was a social drinker. After swimming, I probably, went to quite a few parties, and, the natural thing in New Zealand is just to get boozed, And quite frankly, like, I was finding as you get older, the hangovers get worse, but there's so many other things that I've cut back on drinking, and it helps. If that was one thing that would help me in my business right now with lots going on, it would be to cut down drinking, because drinking just takes away the clarity. It gives you fatigue, and mentally it's not good for your state of mental health. So they were the things I do. What are the strengths and skills developed as a swimmer that have contributed to my achievements today? I pretty much copied and pasted what Hannah put, because I think that's it. Determination, focus, hard work, attention to detail, persistence and resilience. They're all the things that you guys all deal with every day, every week. Whether it's, the foot, you're now going to have to get over this mentally, physically, and get back to September for your competition. And only you are going to be able to do that. So there's things in business that are the same. So attention to detail, swim the bridge. Our first swim under the harbour bridge, it sold out, massive, always thought it would, but the attention to detail on that is ridiculous. Most people wouldn't understand how much detail goes into that event day, and that if some details aren't done, they can cause catastrophic failure. If a briefing marshal boat isn't briefed and doesn't intercept the boat that's coming down the harbour and goes straight through the line of swimmers, I'm pretty much taking the first plane out of New Zealand, because that's my career over. So that's important. Focus, sponsor research, event development, creativity is what I get with focus. Hard work, lots of behind the scenes, preparation before a race, and persistence and resilience, dealing with setbacks, lost sponsors, bad feedback, losing State Insurance as a sponsor in 2015, which completely changed my business. I ran an event called Run the Night, which was a night run in the Domain, which was fantastic, but lost me money. I learnt from that. And finally, what advice would I have for athletes who want to work in events or start their own business? So again, I will email these to Hannah, but you can take your notes. These are the ones that I feel, in no particular order, are the things I've learnt thinking back. Be patient. Success takes time. So you see a lot of people these days, they want it now. I want to be successful next week. It does take time, so be patient. Keep it simple to start, to limit risk and learn as you go. So when I started my business, there was no chance I could have lost 50 grand, okay? If you've got a business where you've got to put money up front, and if it doesn't work, you're going to lose it, think very carefully about doing that. There was no chance I ever was going to lose money, because in my game, I got the money in first and then spent it after. So I'm one of the only industries where the sponsors will pay me before I deliver the product. Most times they'll pay you after. Clear business vision and mission. Now, it doesn't mean doing screeds of planning, because I've never been a fan of that. But think the Fiji thing. Think, I visually could see that event. And when you can visually see it, it helps you plan. It helps you decide what you need to do to get there. Business model and planning. When I say model, I mean, where's the money going to come from and where's it going to go out? What's your revenue? What's your expenses? Who are your customers? I'll put this on an email. Who are your competitors? What product services will you sell? Is there a need for them? Basic questions about, because sometimes you can blindly go into, I'm going to do this. And then your mates are kind of like going, really? They're really passionate about it. So just sort of thinking, is it a business? Run the Night was an example of that. Passion took over. I was blinded. Thought everything I would touch would turn to gold. Like I was doing ocean swim. It was going so well. How could this not work? you know, and I lost a lot of money on that one, but I had a great night. But it was, as I said to my brother, the most expensive party I ever ran. But keep costs low. I worked in my bedroom. I'm still a stickler for costs. My office isn't elaborate. Do it young, there's less to lose. When you're married with kids with a mortgage, I'm telling you right now, you're not going to take a risk. Okay? Most people don't take. Yes, there's the KFC guy who started when he was 60 and made KFC, the Colonel, but do it when you're 25. You know, really it's only your own time you're wasting, you know, for a lot of the time. Gut feel, plus trusted advisors for second and third opinion. So do use your gut feel. Fake it till you make it. Get used to this, I still do. So my wife's starting, she's got an interior design company, and she often says to me, I really don't know whether I think I know what I'm talking about, or they said, I'm in meetings every day, all the time, where I've just got to bullshit, basically. And when you speak with enough confidence, people don't know as much as you think they know more. They don't. I know more than them, and I'm talking sometimes, so you've just got to go for it, you know? And people believe the hype. You're not lying, you just sometimes got to run on the seat of your pants, you know? Follow your passion. The ideal is that you love what you do and the money is secondary. And the times that I've really learnt that lesson was there was a mud event called Mudtopia in Rotorua 2 years ago, and Event Engine, which was another company I did to run brand activations, like for AMI insurance and that. That was purely for the money. And I very quickly figured out, I don't like this. I'm not passionate about this. My drive was coming from what I like doing. So think about that one. It's a business, not a hobby. So don't lose sight of the dollars. You're there to make money, understand the numbers. And what I mean also is that distinguish between your wage and your profit. Quite often new business owners will go in and they will say, oh, I'm making so much money. Okay, so what are you making? 60,000 dropped out the bottom. Okay, what was your previous job? I was earning 80. Okay, so you're earning $20,000 less with all the hassle. Profit is what drops out the bottom after you've paid yourself. If a business is not a business until profit drops out the bottom. If profit doesn't drop out of the bottom after you've paid yourself a fair wage, you've just bought yourself a job, a stressful job. So think about that one. Network, network, network. More open doors. People when you need them. Sponsors. So I know lots of people. There's not too many times. If Hannah said to me now, I need a lawyer, I need a this, I need a that, I think a million people spring to mind, 5 people spring to mind, I go boom, 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 boom. You know? It's because that lawyer may have connected with me or I connected with them or whatever it might be. Me getting in sponsors' doors. So who do I know at that company that could introduce me to that guy there? Because as soon as that guy there knows I know him, or he likes me, he's going to see me. So cold calling sucks. So get a big network. Be social. When there's someone in a room, you guys are in a room, and you're thinking, there's a big businessman over there, but I'm too shy to go and say hello, try and buck up the courage to go and say hello. Hi, I'm so-and-so. I just sort of come and say hello, this is what I do. That person, that lady, will remember you, and it's such a good trait as an athlete. And I see so many athletes that walk around like this, I'm so shy, you know, I do rowing, you know, that's all I do, you know. Don't be that person, be the person that kind of comes out. Just an example quickly of that one, the network. So we've had people have heart attacks in our events and died, right? I needed people to help me at that time. I had 2 swimmers that were loyal swimmers of our series. One was a criminal defence lawyer and the other one was the partner of Bell Gully. Still know him today, still does my swims. If I get in trouble, I ring him. I also had Auckland High Court judge swimming our events. So I had a High Court judge and 2 partners of the biggest law firms in the country on my side because they swim, because I got to know them, you know. So that's an example of a network. As you grow, have other people do what you don't enjoy or aren't good at. So as you grow in your business, that makes sense, okay? I hate running the operational parts of my business, booking the toilets, doing all the planning, the scheduling. Bores me to tears, but it needs to be done. And I can do it if I really had to, but I don't like doing it, so get someone else to do it. Your first staff member is a hard decision and a big leap. So when you get to a point in a business and you're like, I've got so much on and I'm the only one that knows everything about my business, how can I possibly get someone else? Because they don't know anything. Take the leap. At some point you're going to have to teach a part-time person to do what you do so you can get more time and allow yourself to enjoy your business. And final two, keep learning and upskilling and reinvest to improve your business. Don't stay static, which I've said a few times. So yeah, and that was all. I'm going to put some of those key pointers in an email to Hannah to pass on to you. But just finally, is there any questions you've got from that? There's a lot to take in, but that's like distilling 17 years of being an athlete to where I am now. Yeah. No? Good. You probably want to get going.